Enhancing SpringBoot REST API security with AWS Cognito OAuth2 scopes. This podcast is brought to you by Business Compass LLC. We are an Amazon Web Services advanced consulting partner. We build and migrate workloads to Amazon Cloud. Our website is businesscompassllc.com. Our phone number is 973-638-2228. Our email address is contact@businesscompassllc.us. Securing REST APIs is paramount for developers and organizations in today's rapidly evolving digital landscape. One of the most robust ways to secure APIs is by leveraging OAuth2 scopes with AWS Cognito. This podcast will guide you through the process of securing your SpringBoot REST APIs using AWS Cognito OAuth2 scopes, covering key topics such as the use case for OAuth2 scopes. Securing APIs with OAuth2 Client Credentials Grant, understanding how JWT works in securing SpringBoot APIs, API authorization and error responses, and critical points to note. Introduction. OAuth2 is an open standard for access delegation, commonly used to grant websites or applications limited access to a user's information without exposing passwords. AWS Cognito simplifies adding authentication, authorization, and user management to your web and mobile applications. By combining SpringBoot, AWS Cognito, and OAuth2 scopes, you can create highly secure and scalable APIs. Use case for OAuth2 scopes. OAuth2 scopes are a mechanism in OAuth 2.0 that limits an application's access to a user's account. The OAuth2 authorization process involves the client requesting access to specific scopes and defining the access level and permissions granted. This ensures that APIs are protected and only accessible to authorized clients with the correct permissions. Securing APIs using OAuth2 Client Credentials Grant. The Client Credentials Grant is one of the OAuth2 grant types used when the client requests access to protected resources under its control. It is commonly used for machine-to-machine, M2M, applications without end users. Set up AWS Cognito. Create a new Cognito user pool and configure it with appropriate settings. Create an app client and generate the client ID and secret. Configure the OAuth2 settings by enabling the Client Credentials Grant type. Configure SpringBoot project. Add the necessary dependencies for Spring Security in AWS Cognito. Configure the Spring Security settings to use OAuth2 with Cognito. Implement the Security Configuration class to define the security rules and OAuth2 properties. At Configuration. At Enable Web Security. Public Class Security Config extends Web Security Configurer adapter. At Override. Protected Void Configure HTTP Security HTTP throws exception. HTTP. Authorize requests.antmatchers/public/ permit all .any request. Authenticated and .OAuth2 resource server.jwt. Obtain access token. Use the client ID and secret to request an access token from Cognito. The access token will contain the necessary scopes for accessing the APIs. curl location request post https://yourcognitodomain/OAuth2/token. Header content type, application/xwww form Erlang coded. Data Erlang code grant _type equals client _credentials. Data Erlang code client _IE equals your _client _ID. Data Erlang code client _secret equals your _client _secret. Data Erlang code scope equals your _scopes. How JWT works in securing SpringBoot APIs. JSON Web Tokens, JWT, are a compact, URL-safe means of representing claims to be transferred between two parties. JWTs are often used to secure APIs by embedding claims that contain information about the user's identity and the scopes granted. Structure of JWT. Header contains metadata about the token. Payload contains the claims, Statements about an entity, typically the user, and additional data. Signature, used to verify the token's integrity and authenticity. Validation process. The token is received from the client. The token signature is validated using the public key. The claims within the token are checked to ensure they contain the necessary scopes and have not expired. API authorization and error responses. When securing APIs, handling authorization and providing appropriate error responses is crucial. POT authorization. Use annotations or configuration to specify which roles or scopes are required for each endpoint. Implement fine-grained access control to ensure only authorized clients can access specific resources. At REST controller. At request mapping, API public class API controller. At pre-authorize has authority scope _read at get mapping /data public response entity string get data. Return response entity.ok secure data. Error responses. Provide meaningful error messages for unauthorized access attempts. Ensure error responses do not leak sensitive information about the application's security configuration. At controller advice. Public class custom exception handler extends response entity exception handler. At exception handler access denied exception. Class public response entity object handle access denied exception X. Return new response entity access denied, plus x.get message, http status.forbidden. Key points to note. Ensure that your AWS Cognito user pool and app client are configured correctly with the necessary OAuth2 settings. Use the Client Credentials Grant for machine-to-machine communication where no end user is involved. Always validate JWTs to ensure their integrity and authenticity. Implement fine-grained access control using OAuth2 scopes to restrict access to your APIs. Provide meaningful and secure error responses to unauthorized access attempts. Thank you for listening to our podcast. Please share this podcast, visit our website, and follow our social media links.